Vivek Ramaswamy was asked a loaded question by a reporter in Iowa, and his response should be the playbook for Republicans. I'll break down the clip here on the Jonathan Lovegrove YouTube channel. Let's start the clip.
I was just wondering, what were your opinions on the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, I don't think it's one community.
Okay, so right away, she asks a very broad question. When a reporter asks a broad question, that could mean they have a bias, a direction that they want to take the question. So he does a great job here. Vivek denies her premise. What about this community? Well, Vivek responds, it's not just one community. So right away, the reporter, if she has bias, is thrown off her guard. So let's keep on watching.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, how could it be? You just mash together an alphabet soup. Trans is fundamentally in tension with gay, if you ask me. But what's your opinion?
Okay, so Vivek sees that there may be bias in this question. So he immediately, instead of waiting for the bias to sneak its way in later on, he goes straight to the point. What's her perspective? That immediately showcases any bias that there may be in the question, and it gets right down to the point. Let's keep on watching.
I'm personally pansexual, so I was just wondering what your views on same-sex couples were.
I don't have a negative view of same-sex couples, but I do.
Okay, so right there, that probably throws her off guard. In her mind, she's probably expecting a bigoted answer from a far-right Republican, but that's a good way to kind of unsettle the situation, make her think about her position, about his position. Let's see where he takes it.
You have a negative view of a tyranny of the minority. So I think that in the name of protecting against a tyranny of the majority, and there are times in this country's history where we have had a tyranny of the majority, we have now, in the name of protecting against tyranny of the majority, created a new tyranny of the minority.
And right here, he has a great point. It's not actually about whether these communities should be able to exist. The question is about what the government's role should be. Should the government cram this ideology down people's throats? And he quickly gets to that point by talking about this tyranny. I think he articulates it well, and he makes a great case here. Let's keep on watching.
And I think that that's wrong. I don't think that somebody who's religious should be forced to officiate a wedding that they disagree with. I don't think somebody who is a woman who's worked really hard for her achievements should be forced to compete against a biological man in a swim competition. I don't think that somebody who's a woman that respects her bodily autonomy and dignity should be forced to change clothes in a locker room with a man.
Okay, so right there, instead of debating high-end, really the ideology, he goes to these practical examples. And this is what you need to do. These practical examples are the places that this ideology matters. So he's gone in a good direction here that the vast majority of Americans would agree with him on.
That's not freedom, that's oppression. And so I believe that we live in a country where free adults should be free to dress how they want, behave how they want, and that's fine. But you don't become oppressive by foisting that on others. And that especially includes kids, because kids aren't the same as adults.
And bringing up kids, so important here. This is probably the greatest argument against this ideology, is that they're trying to shove it in to kids. And that's really the worst part of this. And again, I think most middle-of-the-road Americans, whether you're Republican or Democrat, agree that this shouldn't be taught to kids. That's very basic, that's very core, and he gets right to that issue in this clip.
And so I think adults are free to make whatever choices they want, but do not foist that ideology onto children before children are in a position as adults to make decisions for themselves. And so I think a lot of the frustration in the country, and if I'm being really honest, that I also share, comes from that new culture of oppression where saying those things can actually get somebody punished. And in my case, it's part of why it's my responsibility to say them. And I respect that you may have a different opinion, and that's okay. Part of what makes our country great is that you and I can be civil and have this conversation, and that we live in a country that still gives us, each of us, the right to speak to a presidential candidate and back, and still say that we pledge allegiance to the same nation. So I think that's the beauty of our country, and that's my honest opinion.
Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your civility as well. I appreciate it.
So right there you see a likely aggressive bias reporter, and by the end of the clip he's made a very reasonable, persuasive case that could actually win over supporters. That right there is what Republicans need to be doing. Focusing on issues where they can win, focusing on examples where they can win. Not being extreme, but finding ways to approach the correct issues, but in a way that draws support from just everyday Americans. Vivek did an excellent job in this clip right here. Now, if you want to see a commercial I made for Vivek, check that out right here, and make sure to subscribe before you leave.